Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Network. If only there was a fine American that was out there fact-checking every day, doing Bolerting as we call it. Eric Bolerting in memory of our beloved. Angela Carusone, CEO of Media Matters, seeing your handsome mug all over the TV these days. Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Well, it's just been it's kind of a stunning week, even for you, right? For Tucker Carlson, etc. Tell us, just what your initial reaction was. Were you, because you had tweeted that you've been saying for years they've been losing money on Tucker Carlson's
Yeah.
show.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of times, and I understand it, but I think a lot of times it's people, when there's some moment of needed accountability, especially with the right wing, and the person doesn't get immediately fired or they immediately change their behavior, the assumption is, well, there was a failure and they lost. And, when you go after someone's advertisers, first of all, that's a really big thing to do. I think it should only happen in really extreme circumstances, right? But when you do it, the idea is that, oh, well, then they'll change, right? They'll say, we're losing money and we have to adapt. And what Fox did after Tucker lost the overwhelming majority of his advertisers a couple of years ago is the same thing they've done every time, which is to say, oh, we're not losing any money. Don't worry about it. And they were losing a lot of money on Tucker's show. He had half of the paid ads on his program that he had for the first few years. I mean, they literally cut the number of paid commercials that he was running on his program by more than half. And they kept it that way for 2 years. I don't think that's the only reason they fired him. But my point in all of that was, for something like this, it's like like anything, it's a cost benefit analysis. And with Tucker, that was one factor. They're losing money. Other factor is that he's uncontrollable. And other factor is that there's more stuff that's going to come out about him, right? So when you keep piling on all of those little individual things, it starts to make people in charge wonder, is it worth it?
Explain, Angelo, to people that aren't in the business, though, that a lot of times people say it's the carriage fees that allow them to make their money. This is why they can be so offensive and lose all their advertisers, and boycotts may not work the way you would think they would with Fox. Can you explain that?
That is true, yeah. So one of the things that Fox did about 12 years ago is they basically artificially inflated Fox News's carriage fee. This is a Roger Ailes sort of idea. And the way it basically works is, if you're any TV channel that is on cable, the cable companies pay them a nominal fee, usually 30 cents, 40 cents, maybe a dollar, so that they could then have all these channels available to their customers, and then they bundle them into the packages, all those little bundles, those tiers of cable packages everybody gets. And it is a nominal fee. That's why channels like HBO, for example, are add-ons for $5 or $8 a month. You have to add that on. They're usually too expensive to bundle in. What Fox News basically did is the same way they turn their audience against people, they turn their audience against cable companies, based a lot on lies, threats that they were going to censor them. And the net result is that Fox News doesn't need a single commercial to be profitable. In fact, they could have $0 in ad revenue. They would still have a 40% profit margin. And that's because they get the overwhelming amount of their money from carriage fees. And one of the things that was happening while the Dominion trial was supposed to be unfolding is Fox News was renegotiating 3 of their really large cable contracts. And the increase that they were trying to get alone was worth about $1 billion a year from just those 3 companies.
Wow. So what Smartmatic is a bigger dollar amount. What's that going to do to them? Is that not going to, you don't think, hurt them either?
It very well could, and they just had a victory this week. They obviously got overshadowed by so much other Fox related news. But they went to court to basically ask for a bunch of documents related to Rupert Murdoch that that Dominion wasn't able to get, but had started to discover that the Murdochs had held back during the discovery process in their trial. Smartmatic won that at the hearing, and Fox agreed that they would, go through the process of essentially turning over these documents. And that is important because, the money is really significant for Fox. That matters. But one of the things that helps lead to this cascade of consequences is the insight. If you start to peel back the veil, it begins to snowball because the entire thing is rotten to the core. It's not like they just did one bad thing one time. It is their business model. Sort of lie.
Lying is their business model. You're exactly right. Yeah, I was saying, like, fraud was Trump's business model his whole life. So, Angelo, in terms of like all the coverage of Tucker and all these stories that we've had come out, so you just think was the drip drip in the full glass? Do you think there was one factor more than others? Because I keep saying it wasn't what already came out, but like you sort of implied what is still yet to come out, right?
Yes, that's right. And I here's the one thing I know for sure. The official reason that Fox sort of started leaking to the Times and has been reported in the last couple of days is clearly not true. And so what Fox News is claiming is that the day of the trial, they discovered that Tucker Carlson is a racist. I mean, that is so ridiculous. Right? They're saying, well, we found this one text message that was part of the materials we collected to respond to Dominion. And when our leadership team found out about this horrible thing that Tucker Carlson said that was racist, we were both shocked and we knew we had to take action right away. And so not only is Fox, that is clearly ridiculous, but they're also blaming Tucker. They're saying that because they found this explosive piece of information, they also realized that they had to settle really quickly in order to make sure that it didn't turn into a larger issue for the company.
Yeah.
Again, kind of ridiculous to blame Tucker for the extra settlement. It was obviously the entire network. It wasn't just about Tucker, but to sort of kick him on the way out. I think personally, and I think the Times sort of alluded to this, is that you have all this Abby Grossberg tapes. You have another lawsuit that's very likely to come out from Ray Epps, who's somebody that Tucker really smeared. Again, each of those is a piece of discovery. Each of those is insight. There's also other tapes, apparently, right? Because if you look at the Times, one of the things that the reporting acknowledged was that there was sort of Tucker's off-camera conversations that somehow got leaked, and clearly there's going to be more of those.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at the totality of circumstances and you recognize that Fox is in the middle of these negotiations now, what they needed was two things. They needed to stop this sort of open wound that was a vulnerability, especially because there's so much uncertainty around it. And then I think the second thing they needed to do, and this is important as well, is that they needed to get control of their company again.
Yeah.
And you'll appreciate this, but like Tucker was not quite at Rush Limbaugh level.
Yeah.
But he was sort of filling the center of gravity left by Rush Limbaugh in the right-wing echo chamber when Limbaugh died. And that is a significant point of influence. So Tucker wasn't too big to fail yet, but he was rapidly becoming too big to fail.
Yeah. Not sure how big a factor calling your boss the C word is, but around here we call that Tuesday.
Yeah, actually, do you want to? One of the stories about that, which is incredible, is he called somebody else the C word in these text messages. Fox's
he called
legal
everybody.
Team, and again, I think this is part of he did. And Fox's legal team redacted this during the discovery process. They said, well, let's redact it. It's not relevant, And Tucker called their head of legal and said, no, I want the world to know I called her that, unredacted. Wow. And he was fighting with Fox's own legal team to get that unredacted so people could see that he was calling these people the C word.
Wow.
He thought he didn't want to hide back. And that I also think is a part of this, is that one of the things Tucker did, not just in the wake of 2020, but also in the process of this Dominion case, is that he was talking to Viet Din a lot at Fox, who's their sort of like head of legal, but he has this very large role and large footprint. And Tucker was fighting with him all the time.
Yeah.
And Viet is a really significant part of like sort of the Murdoch confidence sort of team. And I think if you're him, you're realizing, wow, this guy is getting really big for his britches.
Well,
like he's toxic, he's uncontrollable. I was going to say,
it's
not just on air.
What a den of vipers. You tweeted, so Fox execs kept a record of HR violations, misconduct, and other fireable offenses, and instead of doing anything about it, they let Fox staff endure these issues on the off chance they needed to blackmail Tucker one day. This isn't the own they think it is. And you said, seriously, though, Fox leadership announced that they kept a record of Tucker's misconduct and didn't do anything about it. It's actually breaking my brain how truly up this is. Yeah. Yeah. They Oppo research on their own employees, right?
They did. And like that is, and the idea that they knew about it, sat on it all this time. Like I understand keeping some up. I can appreciate that to some degree, but yeah, there's a den of vipers. They were keeping opposition research to deploy it against them. And that look, that is the environment that is Fox News. And it is rotten to the core. It's not a news operation. It's a political operation. We see similar kind of like backstabbing, right? When a campaign goes bad, right? Especially like a really like toxic republic. They snipe each other. Yeah, I mean, it's not that surprising, but
Right.
they're not a news operation.
Angela, I got to say, though, no one's going to take my joy. I know they'll just get another lunatic, but I do think this is some measure of accountability. You said on Twitter, you said Tucker is toxic and uncontrollable. He's continued pushing election misinformation, white nationalism, wild conspiracies. He launders Jones, InfoWars nonsense on a regular basis. And last thing you tweeted, you said one more thing. Tucker is also a ticking time bomb among the MAGA portion of the Fox audience. Think of all the stuff he said about Trump and the Dominion revelations. Eventually, the Fox audience would see it. Going to be interesting to see what happens now. I mean, obviously, they initially looked like they were losing a chunk of ratings, and Newsmax went up this week. What do you think happens to the right-wing ecosphere now?
I think that the right-wing media is potent because not just its size, but because, as you know, it's an echo chamber. And if you don't have a conductor for a chorus, what you basically have is a lot of disorientation and confusion. You have what we saw during the Kevin McCarthy fight, where you have factions sort of leveraging their influence to then leverage some parts of the Republican Party, and it kind of creates chaos. What Tucker sort of provided was he used Fox News' position to leverage agenda setting power. He was filling the Limbaugh void. And without Fox News, Tucker, I don't care how big his audience get. I really don't care. He will never be able to exert the influence that he had at Fox. That's just a fact. Yeah. I just don't care. And so, one, it's funny that he got fired. It's two, it actually is a big deal in terms of the significance and the destructive power that Fox News have. Like, we have to think about the potential here, and that is greatly diluted. And the third thing is that Fox's audience is going to cannibalize them. I think they'll lose somewhere between 20 and 30% of their audience permanently as a result of this.
I have to hope.
Republicans say they won't cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. But can honest, hard-working middle-class Americans really believe what these politicians say? Republicans said they wouldn't overturn Roe v. Wade. Here's what Supreme Court Justices Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett said during their Senate confirmation hearings.
Roe v. Wade. It is a precedent of the United States Supreme Court. A good judge will consider it as precedent of the United States Supreme Court.
Roe v. Wade. It's settled as a precedent of the Supreme Court.
Roe is not a super precedent, but that doesn't mean that Roe should be overruled.
Well, we saw how that turned out. They played us for fools. Tell your elected officials to keep their hands off of our Social Security and healthcare benefits.